Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Midday Western U.S. Regional Forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. We'll take a look at this map, which shows you the composite flow of the mid-levels of the atmosphere through the first part of the new year here. And what it's featured is this larger ridge that's been sitting in the mid and upper levels south of the Aleutian Islands. Now, what have we gotten around this? Well, remember, in the northern hemisphere, the flow around these ridges is clockwise, so it's something like this. And the flow around the trough, which you see right here, is counterclockwise. And so the trajectory of many of our storm systems recently have come out of the northern part of the Gulf of Alaska and come straight in from this direction into the Pacific Northwest. And as a consequence of that, we have really changed our precipitation patterns here in the Northwest. Now remember, going back quite a long ways here, we were in pretty major deficit in parts of coastal Oregon and Washington and the northern Rocky Mountains in terms of snowfall and in terms of precipitation. But now, just looking back over the last couple of weeks, we can see that those regions were quite wet. Now, as a consequence of getting flow like this a lot, you can see the effect of the rain shadow here is quite pronounced. In other words, we are very effectively blocking the moisture from getting into this area on a routine basis, just simply because we're giving it its best trajectory to hit the mountains square in the face and then run over the top. Now, another consequence of this is that California has been quite dry. But good news is basin average snowwater content numbers are looking very good across all of the West now. And what we can see here is that the numbers I've been quite concerned about in Washington and Oregon and parts of Idaho are now very much more healthy. We're talking a lot of 70s, 80s, and 90s up here in terms of percent of normal. So this has been a big change. And even though we've seen a decrease in the snow content down further to the south in California, well, don't worry, we've got quite a bit more coming. The rest of the Intermountain West is very much doing just fine with snow cover so far this year. But just look at this. Over the last 14 days, that flow pattern, which has come in like this and under like that, has soaked these regions. It's a very interesting pattern to diagnose, and why I'm spending so much time on it at the beginning of your video is it's about to change. And let's talk about that change and see how it's evolving, because by the end of this week, here's the signal. So the jet stream, instead of splitting here over a big ridge that had been sitting in this area, well, it's not doing that anymore. It's coming quite strong in this area and then dipping to the south and then running like that. In other words, it's more of a single branch at this point than a multifaceted piece. What we're anticipating doing, I should say, is breaking off a ridge that's going to sit here just north of Alaska, so a high pressure cell in through there with a low to the south of it. And so the higher over low setup here is far enough away from the west that at least through the next 7, maybe even 10 days, we're going to get to enjoy the benefits of having some southwest flow. Remember, we don't like this flow pattern if it's anywhere close to the western side of British Columbia, California, Oregon, Washington. So sitting over Alaska, that high over low pattern may in the near term be beneficial. But it's a pretty substantial change in the Pacific, getting away from that big split flow we've been talking so much about. Now we're for this new regime. Okay, so let's see what all of this means. Over the next week, what I've got here is the operational European run from this morning, showing us what we're anticipating in terms of total accumulated precipitation. Again, this is the liquid equivalent. So certainly amounts here in the coastal parts of Oregon, Washington, and more importantly, given the anomalies as of late, Northern California grabbing anywhere between 2 and in some locations almost up to 5 inches of rainfall. We will be putting in snow with this, and I'll give you a zoomed in view of what's going on down there in Sacramento Valley in just a few seconds, but let me show you snow here. We're going to see our snow elevations in a few minutes right here in the Cascades, at times, especially in southern Oregon, maybe getting down to 1,000 feet or 1,500 feet. Same thing for Northern California. But the snow we're anticipating here in the northern part of the Sierra Nevada will be generally above 3,000 feet. Now, how much snow are we anticipating out of this? Well, the map you kind of lose some of the values when you get way up here in the color spectrum, but the potential exists for 1 to 3 feet at the higher elevations here in southern Oregon. Same thing running up the Cascade Mountains. And as we get into parts of the Sierra Nevada, specifically right in through here, some of the highest peaks may grab 4 feet of snow. Northern Rockies also picking up quite a bit, anywhere between 6 and 18 inches there as well. And some of the snow is going to be getting into the Snake River Valley, as we can see. So this is going to be a pattern you're going to see in a few minutes is not going to slow down anytime soon. Now, what's got me a little bit nervous about this new pattern is I'm only looking now at week 2. So this basically takes us out from the 22nd of January to the 29th of January. And I'm going to be watching for the development of a low sitting here, a weaker one, sitting somewhere in this vicinity, redirecting the precipitation more at times, maybe into British Columbia, while the flow tends to want to feature a stronger subtropical branch here, maybe giving things over toward a slightly drier than average pattern, focused primarily on California. But I'm going to tell you, I think some things kind of hang in the balance here in week 2 that we're going to have to spend a little bit more time this week diagnosing to understand if this pattern change really materializes the way that the Europeans shows it here. And by the way, the GFS model shows the exact same thing. So very good model agreement into week 2. And this is what I'm watching. Where we have had that big ridge where the flow came around like this, what we're now developing is a couple of very weak troughs, one here and one here. So this is going to redirect systems initially this way and this way. And these troughs aren't deep enough to really be influencing the weather across California, Oregon, and Washington. Remember, if we really wanted to see a lot of precip this time of year, bring in a deep trough that does something like that, and what we'll have is strong Pineapple Express flow underneath it, and we'll just soak the western part of the United States. This is not that pattern. We're putting a little trough here and a broader one in through there. And you see the ridging event here? Well, that is the positive PNA pattern setting up. And we're going to see what that does to temperatures in just a few moments here, okay? So over the next 5 days, certainly the main cold axis runs out of British Columbia through Alberta and into the northern U.S. prairies here. We're going to hang on to our cooler bias, but with time, as the jet stream goes back over into that positive PNA, we do start to rebound in the day 5 through day 10 time period. So a cool start to the week for much of the West, but then rebounding in temperatures as we get into the end of the week and weekend and early next week. Stretching this out to the 10 to 15 day time period here. So again, this gets us all the way out to the 29th of the month. We overall see the main cold axis of air is stretching in through here. And that's because of what we're seeing right out in the Gulf of Alaska, potentially returning much of the West over toward near average temperatures at times. So we need to watch this one very carefully. Now here in the near term, what we're watching is we might have snow down to 1,000 to 1,500 feet here, and like I said, 1 to 3 feet in the higher elevations here in southern Oregon and northern California. As this next system rolls through here, we may possibly be getting snow as high as 4 feet at about right here in the northern Sierra Nevada mountains. So we have quite a bit of active winter weather here across much of the West. In Montana, you are dealing with the bitterly cold air here with these wind chill advisories that are already out for that region. So I want to zoom in and show you a National Weather Service graphic that was just released late last night, and this is out from the Sacramento Valley here and getting into the northern Sierra. So you can see some of the higher elevations here easily grabbing anywhere between 2 and as much as 4 feet of snow. And if we want to take a look at what that rainfall is going to look like, this is just the next week, so this gets us out to next Monday evening. We see here that parts of the Sacramento Valley may be grabbing a ½ inch to maybe up to an inch of precip, and then as you kind of go up the slopes on either side, we are going to be definitely increasing that with the aid of the elevation lift. So this is some much needed precipitation, but like we said, it's not the Pineapple Express, it's not the deep cutoff lows that sneak into Southern California, so precipitation amounts decrease as you run through the valley like this over the next week. But we will be getting some precip, and let's take a close look at when that is coming. So we're going to go over to our operational European model. This is early in the morning on Tuesday, so we have our first system coming in from this direction. Now I'm going to play this for you because I'll go back through some details, but remember our systems were kind of coming over like this, and what I want you to see is they're going to change to come in like this. Okay, so watch. Let's get those drawings off there and just play the animation. Now, do you see the systems over the next week or so? Where are they coming from? They're now coming from this trajectory rather than that. Now, let me show you when and where they're coming in. Let's just step back here and watch it piece by piece. So Tuesday, already got some coastal flow here, onshore flow. We're putting in snow into the Cascade Mountains, into the northern part of California as well. And we're going to continue to see that all the way throughout the day on Tuesday, spreading through Idaho and Montana. The next big low pressure system, this is the one that we've been watching for a while. This is where it is Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, and Wednesday evening. Now watch this one after this point. This is Wednesday evening, about 7 o'clock in the evening. And what we're going to, excuse me, 5 o'clock in the evening. Now we're getting into the overnight hours on Wednesday into early Thursday morning. It'll be at that point, really Wednesday in through Thursday, that we get our biggest snowfall event here for Northern California, Southern Oregon. And watch the precipitation from this point forward. So this is Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, and Thursday evening. That's when it's spreading down through the Sacramento Valley here and potentially adding an enormous amount of snow. Like I said, up to 4 feet here into the Northern Sierra. So this will be the system. Again, it's Wednesday through Thursday that sneaks through, such that by Thursday night into Friday morning, it's now moved pretty far to the south. Now after that, high pressure moves in here, but we do see another low taking shape out here in the open Gulf of Alaska. So let's see how that one gets in as the colder air sinks in and brings quite a bit of snow to the west. Okay, so here we go. This is now getting into Friday night, Saturday morning. We can see the main frontal boundary lashing into the west coast of Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. And that one pushes through Saturday midday into Saturday evening, and then eventually into Sunday morning. So the big show this week is happening Wednesday, Thursday, but systems don't calm down out of the Pacific just yet. Sunday night, getting you into Monday morning, and then getting into Tuesday. So we're still seeing these systems out west pushing out of the Gulf of Alaska into the west coast. And by the way, this is getting pretty far out in the forecast, but the models are still hinting at an active go of it all the way out to about January 22nd, 23rd, okay? Now beyond that, that's where I think the action is going to shift north. So we have, like I said, 7 to maybe 10 days of good precip coming in here to the west, adding to what we've already been receiving and getting into California. But after that, I think the pattern is going to shift where we take aim more here on a trough sitting in the Gulf of Alaska, pushing it into British Columbia rather than here on the west coast. So what are our temperatures going to do? Well, this is every 6 hours through the next 15 days. So ready for this? As we play this forward, let's pause it right here. We can see that as we play just in through this week, we hang on to the cooler than average bias. How much? Maybe as we work our way through Tuesday, Wednesday, into early Thursday, much of the west is anywhere between 3 to 10 degrees cooler than average, except for Montana. That's where the main cold axis of air runs right in through here. So watching this moving forward, notice that once we get out past the end of the week, so this is now Thursday night, getting into Friday. Yep, it's going to be a cool and wet week for parts of California, but after this weekend, when the flow pattern changes direction, look, this is getting into early next week. Sunday's high temperatures, getting into Monday morning's temperatures. What do we see here? We see that positive PNA pattern. Remember that ridge coming in here while the trough sits in this area, and we start to see our systems coming up like this. So as a result, warmer than average conditions as we move into next week. And that seems to be maybe the name of the game as we stretch this out to the third week of the month of January. Now, getting beyond that, I'm seeing just an interesting signal from the models that I'm trying to diagnose fully, because you notice that as I take out here the 26th, 27th, and 28th, yes, the main axis of cold air runs right in through this area. But maybe we're trying to flatten out the jet stream a bit in the west, which could be good, could be beneficial for precipitation, because I certainly don't see the really warm anomalies we would anticipate if we really were going over to a positive PNA pattern like this. So that tells me that the models are not settled on how much precipitation will be coming to the western United States when you look anything beyond about day 8, 9, or 10. That's just what I want to stress, and I'll be covering that in great detail throughout the rest of this week. Now, there's some interesting things happening in the tropics. Namely, they're happening right around the international date line. You see our Madden-Julian oscillation, you hear me talk about it a lot, is coming out of phase 5, screaming through phase 6, and right back into null phase. And what that's doing is, look over here on the map on the right. Right around the international date line, in the low levels of the atmosphere, I just circled those reds. Those reds represent winds in the low levels heading toward the east from the west. See it there? And these blues represent anomalies going in the other direction. I'll kind of put that in white so you can see it here. Now that means right in the middle, we're going to get air that really is converging and rising. And we can see that. We see that right over 180 degrees, whoops, right here. If you go straight north, we see that strong upper level motion. But it seems to be on the move. And this is the movement of the Madden-Julian oscillation. And this is the sinking motion behind it, keeping, well, Australia and Indonesia relatively dry. So we're tending to focus a lot of the dryness here and a lot of the very wet conditions right in through here. And what I'm going to try to diagnose is, what does that do to the subtropical jet stream in February? Does it possibly give us a shot at getting more, well, of a Pineapple Express? Because our models are not advertising it right now. You can see that now January 28th through February 28th, they want to keep something like this going. And therefore, you can see, especially in California, hanging onto the drier pattern. They also want to keep the Intermountain West quite cool, so that means we'll still be packing up the snow in the Intermountain West. But my concern is about California at this point. And I'm going to watch it carefully, spend some time later on today when I get home from Nashville diagnosing this and seeing what we're anticipating as we stretch this out longer term into the month of February. So please watch this week as we continue to update our perspective on the next 45 days or so. Okay? Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you again very soon. Thank you.